to talk about why it's important to automate your finances. Now, I don't mean automate in the sense that you have standing orders for all your payments, but to automate in the decision-making process in terms of what are you going to do and when are you going to do it. And every time you receive your payment, be it commission, be it salary, be it income from the business, you have to decide at that moment. What bill should I pay? Should I go out for this birthday party that I'm being invited to? Should I pay rent? Like, the fact that you have to keep deciding every time you receive money means that the chances of being consistent are a little less. Because hi guys, welcome to my channel. This is the Personal Finance and Coffee podcast, and on today's episode we're going to talk about why it's important to automate your finances. Now, I don't mean automate in the sense that you have standing orders for all your payments, but to automate in the decision-making process in terms of what are you going to do and when are you going to do it. I want to explain much more about what I mean and how this will help you remain consistent with your goals going forward. Let's get into the episode. First of all, what do I mean by automate your finances? What I mean is that do you have these questions in your mind? Okay, fine, they're paying salary, and then you're like, so what do I do? Do I withdraw the money? And every time you receive your payment, be it commission, be it salary, be it income from the business, you have to decide in that moment. What bill should I pay? Should I go out for this birthday party that I've been invited to? Should I pay rent? Like, the fact that you have to keep deciding every time you receive money means that the chances of being consistent are a little less, because every time you receive money there will be a new, in quotes, emergency. It could be a medical, it could be a party that you cannot afford to miss, it could be a wedding. You get what I mean? I'm not saying they're not important, but because you have to decide every time you receive money, it means that the probability of being consistent is reduced. So what I mean by automate is decide what your process is going to look like. Now, in that, when I say decide what your process is going to look like, it does not mean that all these other things that come in are irrelevant and you just let them go. No. Now, when I say decide, I'm going to explain to you what it looks like to automate. One, you know to the exact figure what your fixed outgoings are. You may feel like, but that's obvious, Gabby. Of course I know how much my rent is. Of course I know that the range of my water bill. I know approximately how much I use on your car. I know how much I pay the nanny. But when everything is in our head, it all gets jumbled up. It all gets jumbled up. You kind of have a vague idea of, I know my numbers. But writing them down on paper and saying that the next time I receive my salary, or deciding what, the next time I receive my commission, or whenever you get money, this is the approach I'm going to take for my fixed. If you have a life policy, write it down. If it means pausing this video, please do, and just write it down somewhere. Now, you then have your variables. The ones that don't change. You have to eat, you have to go to work, you have to, if you're someone we have to do our hair, if ladies, if you know. There are things that are variables. You may not do them every month, or they do not have the same amount every month. So have an estimate for that. The first time you do this, it won't be exact. Now, when I'm saying automate, that bare minimum setup is what you're automating. You don't have to decide every month how much should I spend on groceries, how much. Decide once. So in seasons when you have more money, or in seasons when you have a wedding or a medical issue, you will add those in, but the standard does not change. That is what I mean by automate. Have that bare minimum. If the worst came to the worst, this is what I need to survive. Have that written down. Even though you're not a salaried earner, even though you earn on commission, even though you have a business, know that number. Like, decide once, and that is what I'm referring to by automate in this. It's not the typical automate, because when people say automate, they are talking about you have a standing order and the money is deducted. I mean, decide once and know that this is what the number is and this is the setup. Why this is important is that you have a place to come to every time you receive money, and you're not forced to decide based on your mood. You know, when you get money, you're excited and you feel like suddenly now or those shoes I really needed, not that you don't need them, but everything you've been wanting, you feel like I need it tomorrow because of the emotional drive. So when you set that standard of this is my bare minimum, and that you will add on to, if you have a cash round, it goes in there. If you have a life policy, it goes in there. These are the things that are the bare minimum. Have that picture. Now that we've looked at what I mean by automate, how do you do this? Now, when I started this process of trying to make my finances make sense, one day I would write it in one notebook, the next day I would have an Excel sheet, another day I would have an app, and then every month would come, but I would not have my point of reference. So the process of automating, the first thing you need to do is choose where you're going to keep this bare minimum write-up that you've made, that you have decided that this is what I need, bare minimum. Now, bare minimum is relative. My bare minimum may not be your bare minimum, but what is your bare minimum and where are you going to write it? You need to pick a place, and this is the reason why. It reduces the decision-making process of like, where should I write it, where should I go? And every time you have to make decisions, there is more resistance. You even feel, because it's not clear, you have more resistance and you end up procrastinating. You're like, I'll do it next time, and it's easier to just chill and scroll because we're tired. You know, at the end of the day, the last thing we want to do is now remember and decide what to do. When you choose, for example, I'm going to write it in this one notebook, or I'm going to write it in this one budget sheet. In case you're looking for a Google template, I have mine that I made and I use all the time, linked in the description below in case you'd like to purchase it and try it out. So get that one place. Be it a notebook, be it a what. When you choose that place, it may not come to you immediately for the first few months. It may take a while for it to come to you, oh, this is where I write my budget. Over time, you will start to evolve and say, like this, I've been writing it in a notebook, and this is my one place. But then after some time, you'll realize that, okay, yeah, I want to make my budget, but then I realize I left my notebook in office, now I can't make the budget. Or you realize I made my budget in the notebook, I left it at home. Then you say, okay, maybe let me change. Maybe let me use my app, the notes app in my phone. So you use the notes app in your phone. Now, even when you keep changing, as you're experimenting, it's important to decide on where it will go. Don't make it random. That is the first place. Now, once you've decided and you have put it there in your chosen place of keeping it, the next thing that is very important is to outline the actions that you're going to take. How are you going to move this money? You know, we always say make a budget, but how do you make your payments? There are so many ways. You may do online banking and you transfer money directly. You could be a kind who withdraws the money and you go to an agent, banking person, and you send money. Or you may prefer mobile money. You withdraw the money, put it on your phone, and make payments. What is your preferred method of moving the money? Now, why it's important to choose? You may feel like, but Kapi, that's so simple. I'm just moving money. No. When there is resistance, when what you're going to do is not clear, that is where you end up not paying the bill until it's last minute. You're like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot I have to make this payment because it's not clear. So choose how you're going to make it, what your preferred payment is like. So the first step is, where do you write it? If you have it in your notebook, you're like, okay, this is my notebook. I've made the setup of what I've automated. I just go check, this is what I pay, this is rent, this is what. So how do you move it? So look at item by item. How do you pay your landlord? Does your landlord receive cash? Does your landlord want mobile money? How do you pay your landlord? How do you pay your water bill? How do you pay? You know when you feel like, last time I paid it with mobile money, this time I'm going to use an agency banking person. Every time it's different. It makes it less of a habit. You're reacting. But when you look at item by item and say, how is this money going to move? And then you group those that you can together. So you'll have those that you make through bank transfers from your account. Then you have those that you use agency banking, those that use mobile money. So you kind of create an action list for this money, the way it's going to move. Now, why it's important to do this is so that if Wednesday is the day you handle your finances, it is clear in your mind. 1, I'm going to check my set up my bare minimum. 2, I'm going to go to the bank, withdraw the money, send this one here, send this one here, send this one here. You're done. It is clear and it's much faster. You do it in 1 month, you do it another month, before you know it, it doesn't stress you anymore. Because so you know that now the money that I'm left with is what is for my variables. So choose how the money is going to move. Now, when it comes to the money of the variables, there are different ways of handling it. You can choose to leave it on your account and say, okay, I need groceries, let me swipe my card at the supermarket. Maybe that's what works for you. Or you use mobile, you have it on your mobile money, and everywhere you go, you use the Momo code. Maybe that's what works for you. Find what works for you. Now, this, you will know this is my variable, and this is what is left to spend to take me until the next time I receive money. Now that you have actually taken the time to decide on how the money is going to move, it's one thing to set up your automated, minimum spending, what you're going to survive on, and it's another to stick to it, especially when it comes to variables, the transport, the social activities, personal spending, the children, the medical. It's one thing to make the plan, and it's another to stick to it. So the next thing in automating, according to automating by my definition, let's be clear, guys. The next step is to choose on where you're going to keep track of how the money is flowing. And the two important things that you need to keep in mind is that, one, the place that you're going to keep track of the money that has come into your account, or the money you receive and the money that goes out, it needs to be easy for you to do consistently. What is easy for me is not the same for you. When I have an app on my phone, even when I have my phone all the time, I don't think about capturing my expenses in my phone. Guys, I don't know why. For me, it doesn't work. Now, it may work for you though, but you want to know until you try. For me, what works for me is my notebook. I always have my notebook with me. So for me, it's much easier. The money has gone out, I just write it. That's what works for me. I'm going to get into what my process looks like. So choose where you're going to keep track. Now, the second thing that is very important, you need to have a way to know that I plan to spend 500,000 on food at home. We are 1 week into the month. How much have you spent? To keep track on the planned vis-a-vis the actual. When you don't keep track of that, you will get into the third week of the month, and then you'll be like, guys, what just happened? I don't have any money for the last week, and yet I made the budget. These things don't work because you're not keeping track. Now, what I usually do is that I will get that 500,000 and divide it by the number of weeks. Some months have 4 weeks and some months have 5. For example, April had technically 5 weeks. So count the number of weeks and divide. So it's easier for me to monitor on a weekly basis. If I'm supposed to spend 100,000 on things at home every week, then I can know it's Wednesday, so far I've spent 50K. It's Thursday, so far I've spent 80K. Then I'm like, okay, now I'm left with 20,000. Then I assess based on the things that I need, what can I postpone, what can I buy less quantities of. I'm just giving examples, things like that. So it keeps you aware that the decision I am making now, this is the implication it has in the long run. Otherwise, you find that you accidentally spend the money and you didn't intend to, but because you did not have a clear picture of the implication of this purchase on the long-term plan that you made, you're less able to change the decision. Because if you knew that you're buying this item will mean less money by the time the month ends, perhaps you would have reconsidered. So anyway, that is something to keep in mind. So choose on how you're going to do that. It may sound like it takes a lot of time, but it doesn't really take that much. You've made a purchase, it comes down to tracking. And the first few times that you do it, it may stick. You may do it for 1 week and you're like, I've got this, I've nailed it. The third week, you're just not in the mood, and then you fall off, and then you try again. So I'm just giving you ideas so that something might make sense to you and you try that out. But for me, this is what has really helped. So now, what is my system currently? In 2020, about a year ago, I made an episode. I'll have it linked up, episode 14, and I was talking about the routines that were working for me in terms of managing my money and how I was able to keep consistent, as well as the questions I was asking myself at the time. Now it's 1 year later, and now let me give you an update of what my system looks like, because things have changed, not too drastically, But there are things that have changed and some things that I have learned. Now, previously I used to have 3 places that I would track my money. I would write it on a paper, and then I would put it in an app, and then I would put it in a Google Sheet. Now, what has changed is that this over time has become tedious for me. And I would spend so much time in the tracking and less time thinking about how to make more money, you know? So I dropped the budgeting app. Now I don't use the budgeting app. Now instead of tracking on a paper like I used to, I track in a notebook. Why? I changed this because I noticed that I would have a little more resistance, because I would keep the paper at the back of my planner. But I wouldn't always remember to flip at the back of my planner and write. So when a few days would go by, sometimes I'd forget, oh, I bought that thing. And then when I was reconciling, I'd have more errors of things that I forgot to track. So I've now changed and I write in my journal. Now, when I write in my journal, I always have my journal. And I literally journal every day, you know? So for me, this is what I've now come to. Now I capture in my journal. Then I move it to my budget template, my Google Sheet, which I talked about. I move it to my Google Sheet. For me, the Google Sheet just gives me like it gives me a large scale view of everything, or the whole month, on a month-to-month basis. That means the whole year, my net worth. I see a better picture on the budgeting Google Sheet template. Such is what I do. So what the notebook does for me, this is where I am able to look at. So it is Monday, I've spent 20,000 on groceries. It is Tuesday, I've spent another 30, so now total is 50. You get what I mean? So it's the same for transport, or the food I eat at work, or the social events. In a week, like I take these expenses in weekly compartments. So when I make the monthly budget, I divide. Are there 4 weeks? Are there 5 weeks? How much allowance? How much? It's like I'm giving myself pocket money. How much pocket money do I have to spend on these items? And in my notebook is where I keep track of. This is how much I have, and this is how much I'm remaining with. Now, keep in mind that things change. Sometimes we have a calm season, nothing is happening, and other times we have hectic seasons. But when those seasons come in, I'm able to give myself grace. So that is my current system. Now, when it comes to my system for the standard budget, I make my standard budget in the budget template. And then the movement of money, right now there are those that I make transfers online. And then there are those, the variables that I use in my budget binders. There are not so many that I do with mobile money. So for me, it's online transfers, and then the budget, and then cash. Those are the 2 systems that I use at the moment. And it kind of keeps me in flow. Every time I know the month has ended, it's like clockwork. Very many things are not consistent, but for me, when it comes to that, it's like one less thing to worry about. So that is it. If you're curious about what I was doing 1 year ago with my budgeting, I'll have the episode linked, episode 14, for you to, if you're just curious, to check out. If you're looking for a budget template, I have one on my shop listed below, the budget template that I use every month, in case you'd like to try that out. Thank you so much for watching. How does your money flow? What's your process? Please leave it in the comments below. It's always interesting to learn what other people are doing. At the end of the day, we're all on a journey. I don't have it all figured out. I might change my mind next year when I make an update video. And that is okay, guys. I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, and our life seasons change. The most important thing is to try something, see what works, and see what doesn't work. What works in this season may not work in another. But it's like a continuous trial process. Yeah. I hope you found value in this episode. Please like and subscribe so that you don't miss upcoming episodes. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.